What's going on, family? It's your boy G Consciousness in the building, back at y'all again. Y'all see what it is. We're gonna be talking about the Tower of Babel tonight. What led me to this discussion, to even talk about this tonight? Let me get off into that. Let me make sure first that I definitely have sound. So let me check that. What's going on? All right, so we definitely got sound. Grace and peace to the family out there. So let me get the chat out here and let me let y'all know why I'm having this discussion tonight. Hold on, you guys. All right, so we got that done. So, see something real quick. All right, so we cool. We live at 5. All right, we in the building. Okay, so let me make sure this is showing good. Let me share this link, matter of fact. Grace and peace to the family out there. Okay. All right, so let's share. Copy link. I'm just sharing the link, you guys. So bear with me here. All right, so y'all know I'm always checking out the boys over there at the Sakari camp. And so I seen them guys do a video. And so I definitely gotta talk about it, deal with some of them brothers' teachings just as well. All right, let me see. All right, here's in there. All right, cool. So let's post it in one more place. Let's see, where would that be at? All right, so cool. So, all right, family, if you can, share it on your page. I know it's late, 11:13. You know, sometimes I can't do all the little day shows. And I know by the time I get ready to make it pop and make it happen, I'll be getting ready for tomorrow morning. But that's cool, though. It's all good. So when y'all wake up, y'all can definitely, look at some of these things and always have resources to go back to, the extra biblical sources or biblical sources. And so I want to kind of tell you guys what inspired me about why I was inspired to go and do this once again. I seen the Sakari camp, and they was basically doing a street ministry, and so they was telling the brother Eleazar brought up a text concerning Genesis chapter 11, and he goes on to say that God did not want any unity, and God is about segregation, and that's why he segregated the folks in Genesis chapter 12. But that's not really the case. Now, God definitely wanted them to be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth, but he also wanted unity just as well, because he brings unity ultimately at the end. You know, where nations will be, populating the earth, and there will be a peace and a harmony and unity according to Isaiah chapter 2, and a plethora of scriptures that teach that, as well as Genesis chapter 12. And so um, Genesis chapter 12 is right after Genesis chapter 11. So we can see that the redactor definitely wanted to get something to, the audience, those who were going to see these things that had been recorded, and read those things, and see what is the redactor trying to pull out to get to, his people. What's up, Nashawn Richardson? Or just to get to believers. What's up, MJ Jackson? And so, the it was weird to me that they brought this text out when and then bring out the entirety. And that's why I say, if you're going to be dealing with this Bible, or to attempt to pick the book up, it's best to, do it thoroughly. And let's not, be biased on scriptures because you have your position on something, and you have to maintain that doctrine or that position that was taught to you by One West leaders, because that's basically what Sakari and them is doing. And so what I wanted to bring out is that, and I think that a lot of these brothers are afraid for conversation and dialogue. I've reached out to brothers, who else I reached out to? Let's look. Uh, I've reached out to uh, Ayash Itoyak, them brothers over there, and I think that they have a little group just as well. And I forgot what the group was. You know what I'm saying? I've reached out to also, one of the other brothers, Kwana Lawa. And it seems to me a lot of these brothers, what I'm saying, they're afraid to really dialogue when it comes to certain information that's being put out there. But they'll jump on the panel when it comes to Sakari and them and these different other brothers and stuff like that, and get half truths, and what I'm saying, and just sloppy scholarship, because that's basically what's going on over there, as well as both of these guys. As far as when you say the Native Americans is Israelites, and then people rejecting DNA, the DNA hoax, and this is what Sakari and them said, is the DNA hoax. And I'm not saying that DNA is an absolute science, but if anything happens to your children, you take your children to the doctor. You know what I'm saying? Each one of us do that. You know what I'm saying? Because we know that, doctors have stumbled across something to where they are mapping, the genome, and mapping the body, and looking at all types of molecular machines within the body, basically to deal with how to deal with certain sicknesses, and also how to operate on people and different things like that. And so genetics is something that is very important that they study, because you can do so much within that area, in that field. And so you can also know certain genes or certain mutations that that you can possibly that they can possibly avoid, or even possibly in the future deal with certain viruses, and these are just basically temporary fixes. because ultimately we know that we need Christ in order to really fix this world. And so the things that we're doing right now is just temporary. And so because we don't have the body fully mapped out, and because we don't know its entirety, and we're forever learning, we always have to go back to the source. And the source is where the manuscript, where the manual was at, and that manual tells you how the body is operated, how to fix the body, how to fix basically the molecular body. You know what I'm saying? The molecular makeup and structure, because we see that, the Creator brought forth life, and we see how He brought forth light and how material came into existence somewhat. You know, and we got kind of an idea, but when you don't have the entirety of something, then you sequence certain things together, and you make mistakes, and you might think you fix something, but then a side effect comes, because ultimately you fully have not mapped out the body. And so that's just the way it goes. And so, excuse me, I wanted to bring out some of those things in regards to some of this stuff these brothers brought out. I'm going to go back to Genesis 10 and 8, and I'm going to jump to, let's see, you guys should be able to see my screen. So it says, and Cush begot Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel and Iraq and Akkad and Calnai in the land of Shinar, right? Out of that land went forth Ashur and built Nineveh and the city of Rehoboth and Calnai, and reason between Nineveh and Calai. The same is a great city. Now, it's kind of weird that after this, you start to see, and Mizraim begot Ludium. And it seems like it goes right after. The reason why it goes right into it, because it's basically talking about kingdoms that came out of Shinar. And then it gets off into Mizraim, because this is very important, because this is a system that we see that comes from this kingdom of Nimrod. Now, I want to show you what Josephus spoke about concerning Nimrod. And so let's go over to this side, section 2. And let's see. All right, so Josephus, this is the Antiquities of the Jews. I think book 1, chapter 4, section 2. I think that's it right there. Book 1, chapter 4, section 2. So it says, now it was Nimrod who excited them to such a affront and contempt of God. He was the grandson of Ham, the son of Noah, a bold man and of great strength of hand. He persuaded them not to ascribe it to God, as if it was through his means they were happy, but to believe that it was their own courage which procured that happiness. He also gradually changed the government into tyranny. Now, first of all, what we got to understand is they had a government. You got to understand it. They had a government. What up, Tony Tell? And so the scripture is clear that Nimrod saying that any type of happiness that people had, or any type of accomplishment that they had, he's saying that he persuaded men not to ascribe that type of happiness being from God, or basically anything that came about was basically their doings from their own hands. Now, Nimrod was a mighty hunter. And so we see that he's also depicted as the mighty hunter motif, which is an iconic motif that we see that is in from all the way from Iran to the Near East until we start getting into the Levant area, into Egypt, and also in Europe and different parts of Asia. And so we see this motif is something that is out there of it. And what we see is the master of animals motif. And this motif is a motif to where we see that a man is grasping animals. Even when we talk about Orion's belt, when we see that it's this guy and he has an arrow and he's, shooting it at a lion or something like that, a Leo. And so this is basically a religious motif that we see that has been spreaded into all the world. And so we can see that Nimrod, he basically is telling people that to take whatever their happiness comes from their own works of their hands, basically. And as we just seen, there is a government. It says he also gradually changed the government into tyranny, seeing no other way of turning men from the fear of God, but to bring them into a constant dependence on his power. And so what Nimrod did was he was persuading men gradually to basically turn against God and to change the very government that God had established by way of Noah, and to bring them into dependence on his power, because he was this great hunter. So if they needed food, they would depend on him, and he became actually their hero. This is why his motif is spread into all the world, the master of animals motif. And so his family was hunters. They gathered food. So let's continue to read on what Josephus continues to say about these things. It says, he didn't want men to fear God and none of those things. He wanted men to depend on him. It said he also said he will revenge on God. In other words, he wanted to take revenge on God for what happened to the world of him drowning their ancestors. He also said he would revenge on God if he should have a mind to drown the world again, for that he would build a tower too high for the waters to be able to reach. What up, Andrew? And that he would avenge himself on God for destroying their forefathers. So he wanted some get back. Let's look at 3. And this is Complete Works of Flavius Josephus, The Antiquity of the Jews, Book 1, Chapter 4, Section 2 and 3. We're just reading down a little bit. Now the multitude were very ready to follow the determination of Nimrod and to esteem it as piece of a cowardice to submit to God. And so, in other words, nobody wants to be sensitive to what God was, and to submit to him is to be a coward. What's up, Moy Joy? Right, a tyranny, a nation under cruel and oppressive government. Definitely. And so, what he did was, it says that, if a person was to submit to God, they was doing it under cowardice because of they feared God in the sense of what God did during the flood. So basically, he telling people, "Oh man, you gonna listen to this guy? This guy flooded out your ancestors." And I'm saying this, you're a coward and this and that, and you shouldn't fear God. And if anything, whatever comes about from the strength of your hand. Happiness belongs to you, and you can obtain that happiness by the works of your own hand. You can obtain that on your own right doings by the works of your own hands. And so he's teaching them. He's taken away from the very government, which is a government that God wanted to go about, but he's teaching them otherwise, and he's teaching them a government that they may be persuaded to rely on the strength of his hand. In other words, bread from him. And so when we look at the end time, when we deal with Revelations, what do we see? Politics, economics, and religion. Because remember, Nimrod had religion. He was dealing with economics because he was a mighty hunter, so he dealt with that. And he was political because he was a king. And so he established a government to where the people will depend on the works of his hands and not of the works of God's hands. And he persuaded men to depend on the works of their own hands just as well, and not give God any glory. And if they gave God glory, then they was cowards because they were scared that God would bring a flood on the earth again. And it says, and they built a tower, neither sparing any pains, nor being in any degree negligent about the work. And by reasons of the multitude of the hands employed in it, it grew very high, sooner than anyone could expect. Sooner than anyone could expect. But the thickness of it was so great, and it was so strongly built, that thereby its great height seemed upon the view to be less than it really was. It was built of burnt brick, cemented together with mortar made of bitumen, that it might not be liable to emit water. So they building something that's totally against what God has told them to do. When God saw that they acted so madly, he did not resolve to destroy them utterly, since they were not grown wiser by the destruction of the former sinners, but he caused a tumult among them. So the reason why God is against this is because they're building a government, and the government that they built is in opposition of his government. And so when we look at it, this is the reason why. It's not that he don't want them to be in unity together. We know he wants them to be in unity together because we see that at the end times, that is exactly what happens. God puts all rebellion under his feet. God stops the nations from warring against each other. They won't lift up sword against each other. They will know no war no more, and they will have a peace, the peace of God. And the Bible says that God will be all in all. It means that God will dwell in all. And so it's not that he did not want them to be joined together. What he's pointing to here is that if you're going to be joined together in righteousness and not in unrighteousness. And so when you're when you're trying to defy God and come up against him, then of course he's going to cause derision to come on you, as he did when we see in the Bible of nations that came up against Israel, because God had a purpose in Israel, which was concerning the seed, which will cause all nations to be blessed, according to Genesis chapter 12 and also Galatians 3 and 8. And so to outright just say that this text is God wanted this, no, God did not want this. God said that he came down to separate them, lest they do things, do so whatever they have imagined to do. And we know in Genesis chapter 6, they imagined to do wicked things, so that God won't have to destroy them utterly as he did before. God spared them and just separated them and came through a nation that would represent him, which was Israel, until the seed shall come. So let's continue reading and see what he says. And so remember, this government is built upon economics, politics, and religion. And this is the beast system, because this is what was set up, a buy, sell, or trade. So he's telling them, whatever things that you have, happiness, whatever emotions, whatever type of things that you have, bring that to me. In other words, Nimrod says, bring that to me. And people would basically put their trust in him and their strength in Nimrod, because he was looked at as a hero and he gathered food. He was a mighty hunter. He fortified cities. It says, he caused a tumult among them by producing them diverse languages, and causing that through the multitude of those languages, they should not be able to understand one another. The place wherein they built the tower is now called Babylon, because of the confusion of that language, which they readily understood before. For the Hebrews mean by the word Babel, confusion. The Sybil also makes mention of this tower and of the confusion of the language when she saw this. when all men were of one language, some of them built an high tower as if they would thereby ascend up to heaven. But the gods sent storms of wind and overthrew the tower and gave every one his peculiar language. And for this reason, it was that the city was called Babylon. But as to the plain of Shinar and the country of Babylonian, Hezekiah mentions it when he says, thus such of the priests as were saved took the sacred vessels of Jupiter, Elias, and came to Shinar at Babylon. And it's not odd that when you look at some of the Greeks and Alexander, he wanted to set his base up in Babylon. So just want to bring out some of the things to where we can see that one of the reasons why God is bringing wrath on Babylon is not because these people, not because of, unity. It's more so because of their unity to do wickedness or swiftness to do wickedness and be against him and disobedience and in opposition of him on what God wanted them to do. And so I don't know why would Sakari and them teach that, because that's not what the scriptures is talking about. And so we see also in Revelations chapter 14, it's saying that the angels or the messengers was to preach the gospel, the everlasting gospel unto the nations, to tell them to come up out of mystery Babylon system. So to say that that is the case, I don't know really where they got that from. And so let's go over back to the text. Let's see what's up. All right, so let's go to 1. It's after this. This is I believe chapter 5. It says, it's chapter 5, section 1. It says, after this, they were dispersed abroad on account of their languages and went out by colonies everywhere. And each colony took possession of that land which they light upon and to which God led them. So one of the things is God led them and dispersed them to that to those to their possessions, so that the whole continent was filled with them, both the inland and the maritime countries. There were some also who passed over sea in ships and inhabited the islands. Now, what's clear is that they did have ships at that time. They had a government, they had ships. And when you look in the Epic of Gilgamesh, you see that there is a ruler there, and his name is it got Cush in it, but I can't remember fully his name. But he sailed, and they had ships, and they said that he came into a far country. And when you read Genesis, the civilizations, well, hold on, I'm sorry. What is it? By David Rowe. I forgot what the book is. Man, I forgot. Slipped my mind. Genesis, the civilizations, the beginning of civilizations, or something like that. Man, something like that. I forgot. But let's see. Is this the? No, this is not it. This is a test of time. Because I don't know what I did. But anyways, when you read that, it talks about how one of the rulers came into a far country by ship. And to be honest, I really think that that was Cush and his sons. And I think that they came to what we see today as the Kemet. And the reason why I say that is because some of the motifs that we see that come out of Kemet, come out of the Nile Valley, is in Kemet. Some of the stuff that come out of Mesopotamia, those iconic motifs is in Kemet, the Nile Valley. And so we see that they had ships during that time. And they went in around the Mediterranean, as well as through the Nile and other places they located. And there were some also who passed over the sea in ships and inhabited the islands. Some of those nations do still retain their denominations, which were given them by their first founders, but some have lost them also. And some have also omitted certain changes in them that they might be the more intelligible to the inhabitants. And there were the Greeks who became the authors of such mutations. For when in after ages they grew potent, they claimed to themselves the glory of antiquity, giving names to the nations that sounded well in the Greek, that they might be better understood among themselves, and setting agreeable forms of government over them, as if they were a people derived from themselves. And so basically, we can kind of see the separation of the Urbs and Magog and, Gomer, Galatians. It says whom the Greeks now call the Galatians. And so we see that the different separations in Magogites. Now as to Javan and Madai, the sons of Japheth. From Madai came to the Medians, who are called Medes by the Greeks. But from Javan, it says from Madai, it says from Madai came the Medians, who are called Medes by the Greeks. But from Javan, Ionia, and all the Grecians are derived. And so we can see that, this separation that took place. But I just want to kind of show you guys that what these guys are bringing out is not actually true. You know what I'm saying? And that we got to make sure we stay studied up and fact checked a lot of those things, because people will straight up be lying, basically. And so hopefully you guys can look at that and realize that this is not what they're teaching is not the text at all. And so then when you go to Genesis chapter 12, it kind of shows you, what the Lord's plan was right after that. It says, verse 2, and I will make of thee a great nation, which is from Abraham, and I will bless thee and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. So Abraham will be a blessing, and his name will be made great, and he will be a great nation. And thou shalt be a blessing, and I will bless them that bless thee. So whoever will bless Abraham and bless his seed, that he will bless them. He will bless them. And whoever will curse them, that he will curse them. And it says, and in thee shall all the families of the earth be blessed. And so there is something that is in Abraham, which is Christ, that will cause all the families of the earth to be blessed, because if a person is in Christ, then they themselves are blessed. And so the scriptures is clear. If a person is against Christ, whether it's Israel, whether it's the other nations, if they're trying to kill the prophets or stop the message of God or stop the Christ from coming, then God will curse them. And so we see that God has cursed Israel, God has cursed other nations, and God has mercy on people. And so ultimately, the goal is to get people with one mind to recover the earth, and that God may be all in all. That's what the scriptures teach. I don't know anything else besides that. So I just wanted to point some of those things out. Hopefully these brothers will repent, you know what I'm saying? Because they teaching a lot of falseness. With that being said, grace and peace to you guys, and I will holler at you guys in a minute.